A cold morning mist hung low over the quiet streets as Daniel, a single father, balanced a paper coffee cup in one hand and his young daughter Lily's tiny backpack in the other. Life hadn't been easy since his wife passed away 3 years ago. Every day felt like a careful routine he couldn't afford to break: wake up early, get Lily ready for school, drop her off, and rush to his job at a small auto repair shop. There was no room for mistakes, no time for distractions. Yet somehow, every morning, there was something that quietly became part of his routine, something he never planned. It started with a woman sitting on the same bench near the bus stop just 2 blocks from Lily's school. She looked to be in her early 30s, always dressed neatly but worn out, as if life had been pressing too hard on her shoulders. The first day he noticed her, she was shivering slightly, her hands wrapped around nothing, as though she wished she had a cup of coffee. Daniel hesitated, then walked over and handed her his extra cup. She looked up, surprised, her tired eyes softening. "Thank you," she said quietly. That was all. No long conversation, no questions. Just gratitude. The next day, Daniel brought 2 cups again. And the day after that. It became an unspoken habit. He never asked her name, and she never asked his. Some mornings, they exchanged a few words about the weather or how early the buses were running. Other days, they simply shared a silent nod. Lily once asked, "Daddy, who is that lady?" Daniel smiled gently and replied, "Just someone who needs a little kindness." Weeks turned into months. Daniel learned small details without meaning to. She was waiting for a bus that sometimes never came, she often looked exhausted like she hadn't slept, and she carried a folder that she held onto tightly, as if it contained something important. Still, he never pushed. He had learned in life that people carried invisible battles, and sometimes the best help was quiet and consistent. One rainy morning, the sky poured heavily, soaking everything in sight. Daniel almost skipped the stop, thinking she wouldn't be there. But something told him to check. And there she was, sitting on the bench, drenched despite trying to shield herself with a thin scarf. Without a second thought, Daniel took off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. "You'll get sick," he said simply. She looked at him, eyes glistening, not from the rain, but from something deeper. "Why do you do this?" she asked. Daniel paused. He wasn't used to explaining himself. "Because I know how it feels when life doesn't go the way you planned," he said quietly. "And sometimes, a small thing can make a big difference." She didn't reply immediately. Instead, she just nodded, holding the jacket close. The next morning, she wasn't there. Daniel felt an unexpected emptiness as he stood by the bench, holding 2 cups of coffee. He waited for a few minutes longer than usual, then finally left. Days passed, and she didn't return. He told himself it didn't matter, people come and go, that's life. But something about her absence lingered in his thoughts. Then, one morning, nearly 2 weeks later, as Daniel was walking Lily to school, a sleek black car pulled up beside them. He instinctively stepped back, protective, pulling Lily closer. The window rolled down, and to his surprise, it was her. But she looked different. Her hair was neatly styled, her face rested, and her clothes were elegant, nothing like before. She stepped out of the car, smiling warmly. "I've been looking for you," she said. Daniel blinked, confused. "Are you okay?" She laughed softly. "More than okay. Thanks to you." She introduced herself as Sarah. Then she took a deep breath, as if preparing to say something important. "I wasn't just waiting for a bus," she began. "I was at the lowest point in my life. I had lost my job, my apartment, and honestly, my hope. Every day, I sat there trying to figure out if I should even keep trying anymore." Daniel listened quietly, his heart tightening. "But then you showed up," she continued. "Every single day, without asking anything in return. You didn't know my story, and you didn't need to. You just helped." She looked directly at him, her eyes filled with emotion. That changed something in me. Daniel swallowed, unsure what to say. I used the strength from those small moments to keep going, she said. I kept applying, kept trying. And eventually, I got a job offer, a really good one. I've been settling everything, new place, new life. Lily looked up at her father, smiling, as if she understood more than her years allowed. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. I know you didn't do it for anything, but please, let me do something for you. Daniel shook his head immediately. You don't have to. It's not just money, she said gently. It's an opportunity. The company I work for, we're expanding. I spoke to my manager about you. They're looking for someone reliable, hardworking. I told them about the man who helped a stranger every day without fail. Daniel stood frozen. You changed my life, she said softly. Let me help change yours. For a moment, the world felt still. All the struggles, the long days, the quiet sacrifices, it was as if they had all led to this unexpected moment. Daniel looked down at Lily, who smiled brightly and whispered, "Say yes, Daddy." He looked back at Sarah, a small smile forming on his face. "Okay," he said. And in that simple word, something shifted, not just for him, but for all of them. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness don't just help someone survive a day, they change the course of an entire life. The word "okay" lingered in the air longer than Daniel expected, as if it carried more weight than just a simple agreement. For years, his life had been defined by survival. Wake up, work hard, take care of Lily, repeat. There was no space for risk, no room for opportunity, and certainly no expectation that something good would come knocking on his door. Yet here he was, standing on the side of a quiet street, being offered a chance he never saw coming. Sarah smiled, a mixture of relief and happiness crossing her face. You won't regret this, she said softly. I'll set up an interview for you. It's not just because I recommended you, they'll want to meet you, but I know you'll do great. Daniel nodded, still processing everything. Thank you, he said, his voice sincere but slightly overwhelmed. That day felt different from the start. Even as he walked Lily into her school, something inside him had shifted. It wasn't just hope, it was something deeper, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time, possibility. Daddy, Lily said as she held his hand tightly before heading into her classroom, that lady looks happy now. Daniel smiled gently. Yeah, he replied. She does. Is it because you helped her? He paused, crouching down to meet her at eye level. Maybe, he said. But mostly, it's because she didn't give up. Lily thought for a moment, then nodded. You didn't give up either. Her words stayed with him long after she disappeared into the classroom. The following days were filled with a quiet tension Daniel hadn't felt before. Sarah had arranged an interview at a mid-sized logistics and operations company, far from his usual world of grease-stained hands and engine repairs. The position was for a supervisor role in their fleet maintenance division, something that required both technical knowledge and leadership skills. Daniel almost laughed when he first read the description. Supervisor, he muttered to himself. I barely have time to supervise my own life. But Sarah had insisted. You've been managing more than you think, she told him over the phone. Running a home alone, raising a child, working full-time, you already know responsibility. You just haven't been given the title. Still, doubt crept in. The night before the interview, Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the printed papers Sarah had emailed him. Lily was asleep in the next room, her soft breathing the only sound in the apartment. He looked down at his hands, rough, scarred, evidence of years of hard work, and wondered if they belonged in a place like that. What if I mess this up, he whispered to himself. But then he remembered Sarah sitting on that bench, soaked in the rain, barely holding on, and how she found a way to stand again. If she could try again, he said quietly, so can I. The morning of the interview arrived faster than expected. Daniel wore the only formal outfit he owned, a simple button-down shirt and a pair of pressed trousers he hadn't worn in years. It felt strange, almost like he was pretending to be someone else. Lily noticed immediately. You look fancy, she giggled. He smiled nervously. Let's hope they think so too. When they stepped outside, something unexpected happened. Sarah was there. Leaning against her car, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, she said with a smile. Daniel let out a small laugh. I guess now it's your turn. She handed him the cup. Just returning the favor. There was a brief silence, but it wasn't awkward, it was full of understanding, of everything that had led them to this moment. You'll do great, Sarah said. Just be yourself. Daniel nodded. That's the only thing I know how to be. The office building was larger than anything Daniel had ever stepped into. Glass walls, polished floors, people walking briskly with purpose, it was a different world entirely. For a moment, he felt like turning around. But then he thought of Lily. He thought of all the mornings, all the sacrifices, all the quiet strength it took to keep going. And he walked in. The interview wasn't easy. There were questions he didn't expect, terms he wasn't familiar with, and moments where he felt completely out of place. But something surprising happened as the conversation went on. Daniel stopped trying to impress them. He just told the truth. He talked about his years of hands-on experience, about solving problems under pressure, about managing difficult situations at the repair shop. He spoke about responsibility, not in corporate terms, but in real-life examples. I may not have a degree in management, he said at one point, but I've been managing a life that doesn't leave room for mistakes. When something goes wrong, I fix it. When someone depends on me, I show up. Every time. The room fell quiet. One of the interviewers leaned forward slightly. That's actually what we need. For the first time, Daniel felt something shift. Maybe he did belong here. Days passed after the interview, each one stretching longer than the last. Daniel tried not to think about it, but it was impossible. Every phone call made his heart race. Every unknown number made him pause. Then, one afternoon, as he was working under the hood of a car, his phone rang. He wiped his hands quickly and answered. Hello? Hi, Daniel. This is from the company you interviewed with. His breath caught. We'd like to offer you the position. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Daniel? Yes, he finally said, his voice almost breaking. Yes, I'm here. They continued explaining the details, salary, benefits, start date, but Daniel barely heard them. His mind was already somewhere else. Back on that bench. With a cup of coffee. A simple act of kindness. That evening, Daniel and Lily celebrated in the simplest way possible, take-out food, laughter, and a sense of relief that filled their small home like never before. Does this mean things will be easier now? Lily asked. Daniel looked at her, smiling softly. Yeah, he said. I think it does. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just about things being easier. It was about something bigger. A week later, on his first day at the new job, Daniel arrived early. As he stood outside the building, adjusting his shirt nervously, he saw a familiar car pull up. Sarah stepped out, smiling. Ready? She asked. He took a deep breath. Ready. They stood there for a moment, both remembering where it all started. You know, Sarah said, I kept wondering why you helped me. Out of all the people who walked past, you stopped. Daniel thought for a moment, then shrugged lightly. I guess. I just didn't want you to feel invisible. Sarah's eyes softened. Well, she said quietly, you didn't just see me, you reminded me that I mattered. Daniel smiled. And you reminded me, he replied, that sometimes doing a small thing can lead to something big. As they walked into the building together, it didn't feel like the end of a story. It felt like the beginning of something new. Because life has a strange way of connecting people, of weaving moments together in ways we don't understand at first. A cup of coffee, a kind gesture, a simple thank you, they might seem small in the moment. But sometimes, they're the very things that change everything. And for Daniel, it all started with choosing kindness, on an ordinary morning, that turned out to be anything but ordinary.